Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. So this is .NET 7 Blazor WebAssembly JWT Authentication series. Okay, this, this is part 4 video on generating JWT access tokens for user login. Okay, JWT means JSON Web Token. And also we are going to implement the login form in Blazor WebAssembly application, and from that form we are going to invoke the login endpoint. Okay, first let's create the login component. Okay, in our Blazor application, let's create the component, new component. So I will give name like login. Okay, let's add route for this component using page directive. Slash login is my route. Okay, so on UI, on menu bar, let's add our login link as well. For that, let's go to shared folder and main layout. Okay, let's add one more link tag. Okay, here change href to login and change label to login. Okay, let's check now. See, we are getting login. So let me add some spacing here. So on the login link, okay, let's add a style like, let's give right hand side margin like MR2. Okay, that means 8 pixels. So let's run again. Okay, we got some space, and if I click on login, we are successfully navigated to our login page. Okay, now just like our registration component, in login also we are going to have form, login form. So what I will do, let me copy this HTML content. Okay, I want to use it here. Okay, now we have to do some modifications here. Okay, for now, let's remove this API response message. Okay, let's remove this and remove first name, last name. We need email and we need password. Let's remove this confirm password also. Okay, and here button name should be login. Okay, for now let's remove on click as well. Okay, here first let's create a model for my login form. For that, let's add a new view model in our accounts folder. So let's add a new class like login VM. Okay, our login VM contains simply two properties like email, okay, and password. Okay, now let's create the instance of this login VM in our login component. Okay, so login VM, login model. Okay, and pass this login model variable name to model attribute on mud form. Okay, and use this login model variable here as well for field bindings. Okay, and let's create a mud form variable. Okay, so mud form. Okay, I want to use this form variable. Okay, so what it gives, we know mud form get control over our form. Okay, now we need to provide the validations also. Okay, let's create a model for login VM, like login validation VM. Okay, login validation VM. Okay, it must inherit abstract from fluent validator, abstract validator, and here type should be our actual model, that is login VM. Now add the constructor, and inside of the constructor, let's provide the rules for our validation. Okay, so here I am going to apply rule for email first. Okay, so email, I'm going to apply not empty and dot email address validation. So I will add a simple error message like mess with message. Okay, something like invalid email. Okay, same way let's apply rules for our password. So what I will do, I am going to add all the registration validations here as well. Okay, so what I will do, I will simply copy from here. Okay, and add here. But if you observe, this message is for good to show for while we are registering, right? While registering, when we create password, we should let our users know what kind of password we must give. But while login, we should not show like this. Okay, so we will show simply same message like invalid credential. Okay, same message for any kind of rule violation. Okay, because it is login, right? So if you don't do password validation client side also, it is fine. But the reason why I'm doing means at least we can avoid the server call when we know that user entered is invalid password pattern. Okay. So that is the reason I am adding the validation to the password, just registration validation. If you don't want to do the validation here, absolutely fine, because anyway at the in the login endpoint we will definitely validate the password. Okay, so but this way of implementing helps us to reduce the API calls. So now, just like registration validation model, we are going to have this validate value func. So copy this. Okay, and add it here. And I have already explained previously, right? So this going to just uh, use the array of error messages, and that's we are going to provide to the form. And here we have to change our model. So here our model is login VM, right? Now go to our login component. Now let's initialize our login validator object. Okay, so login validator. Okay, and we should pass this login validator dot validate value to validation attribute of mud form. And let's create a method here like private async task login async. Okay, so here we know what we have to do means We will just validate the form before submitting or before invoking the API call. For that, I can use form dot validate method. Okay. So if form dot is valid, okay, then only we have to implement the logic to invoke the API call. And let's register this login to our button, login button. So on click, assign our login async method. Okay, now let's check the form, login form. See, here is our login form. If you try to log in, basic validations are fine. Okay, so far so good. Let's jump to our API project. So we are going to implement our login endpoint. Okay, that means we are going to generate the JWT access for authenticated user. Okay, first to prepare token, we need few settings. So let's store those settings in the app settings.development.json file. Okay, so let me create settings like token settings, properties like secret key. Okay, so these are settings are used in generating the JWT token, as well as same settings can be validating against the JWT token whenever user requests the secured endpoints. Okay, so security key, sure, okay, and audience. Okay, so security is any random key you can use. Just search like online random string generator. Okay, go to one of the website. Okay, here I want a string of 20 characters, uppercase, lowercase. Just I am generating a random string. So what I will do, I am going to take one means lot total 40 characters. Okay, any random string you can add it here. Okay, the thing is this secret key will be used in generating the JWT access token. If you want, you can regularly change this key, but what happens means already authenticated users JWT token will be gets invalid. Okay, if you change the secret key because they need to re-log in again. Okay, so just a secret key, any random string. Now come to the issuer. Issuer means the server which is issuing the JWT token. Here is our API is the issuer. Okay, so here I can provide the domain of my API as a value. So it will be added as a claim in JWT token. Okay, so this is my domain, right, for my API. Copy that. Can give any string, but it is good to give the domain name. Okay, add audience. So audience is nothing but the application which is consuming the our JWT access token. In our case, our Blazor WebAssembly application, right? So here I am going to provide the domain name of my application. Okay, so those are the settings. So let me create a class for this token setting so that I can easily read them with type safety. Okay, so let me create a new folder in the API project. Like I will name it like shared. Okay, under it add one more folder like settings. So inside of it, let me add class like token settings. Okay, so it's going to have all these properties as a all these. settings as a properties here we are going to have. Okay, so public string secret key, public string issuer. Okay, so this is my token settings class. So where if you want to inject this token settings wherever we need, we have to register it in program.cs file. Okay, so here builder services configure, okay, and specify the type like token settings. And here we have to read it. So to read the JSON settings, builder dot configurations dot get sections. And to these sections you can use like this when your class name matches with the property name in the JSON. Let me confirm it is same. If not, you can directly provide the string property. Okay, so that is the registration of the token settings. Okay, now let's go to our service, iUser service, and let's try to create a login method definition here. Okay, so for now, let me return task login async. Okay, so this will be my login method, right? It should contains the login payload. So for that, let me create a DTO. Okay, so let's create a class and DTO is like login DTO. So it contains email, okay, password. Okay, so I'm going to use this object as a payload to my method. So login DTO, login payload. Okay, so let's implement this method in our user services. So let me implement. So here is my method. So first thing is I want to check whether login payload contains data, means email and password cannot be empty. Okay, so if string dot is null or empty, login payload dot email. Okay, okay, and string dot is null or empty. Let's check for password also. Okay, if they are empty, let me return a boolean value like false. That means login is failed. Invalid user is trying to log in. So now we have to change the type of our method definition. Okay, so let's specify bool. Okay, so here also let me change to bool. Okay, return false. So here it should be asynchronous method, right? Now using email address, we have to filter the database or query the database because password is hashed password we store in DB, right? So we can, this is a normal plain user sending password. So we cannot use password also in the where condition. We need to fetch the user by email address. Okay, where user equal to await old DB context user where Okay, email filtering we have to do. So equals to login payload dot email dot tool over. Okay, and first default async. Okay, now if user is empty, that means user trying to authenticate with invalid email address. Then also we simply return false. If user exists, first thing we have to validate the password. A password is matching or not. So for that, let me create a private method to compare the password. Okay. So private full password verification. Okay. So this method should contain two input parameters. One is plain password, which is nothing but password comes from our login form. Okay. Another thing is DB password. From database we are fetched right user information that password value. Now we have to compare them. So we cannot decrypt the DB password because it is hashing. Hashing means one-way hashing. It cannot be decrypted. So to compare it, first what we have to do means, so if you recall, our final password is see here, hashing password method. Our final password is convert to base 64 string, right? So our DB password is base 64 string. First, we have to read the bytes of data. That means we have to decrypt the base 64 string. So for that, byte array of DB password hash equal to convert dot from base 64. Okay, we will get the actual hashed password into DB password hash. Okay, and if you recall our hash password method, inside of the actual password bytes, first 16 bits are actual salt key. So salt key is used for encrypting the password here in this line. So what we did, we saved our user salt key along with the password. A total password is 36 bytes. In that first 16 bits are salt keys. So what I have to do, I have to get the salt key first. Okay. So let me declare a variable byte array of salt. Okay. Equal to 16 bytes. I will have 16 byte variable. Now I will copy the first 16 bytes of DB password hash into this salt variable. Okay, to copy, I can use array dot copy. Okay, here we will have overloaded method. So from source, first we have to define the source. Source is our DB password hash. Okay, and the starting index of the source. Okay, source index. Next salt. Destination is our salt variable, right? Salt variable from where 0 index to 16 index. Okay, so it is copy the first 16 bytes into the salt variable. That means we are able to fetch the salt. So now we have a salt, we will have plain password. Now what we will do, we will again encrypt our plain password. Okay. So for that, what we will do, we just copy the two lines of code what we used for registration. So this RFC 2898 driver bytes. So copy this code. Okay, same code we can use here. So let me explain here once again. So RFC derived bytes is used to hash our password. Okay, for that it will take first parameter is the plain password, second parameter is the salt key, and how many iterations we have to do for hashing and the type of algorithm. Okay. So here ultimately what I am doing, I am again hashing my password using same salt key which we used for actual password that we saved into the database. Okay. Now I got new password hash here for my plain password. So now I can compare this RFC password hash with my DB password hash bytes. Okay. So to compare, so let's write a for loop. Okay. So RFC password hash is 20 bytes, right? So take the 20 bytes. Actual password is 20 bytes only. Okay. So now what we will do? We will compare the each byte from DB password hash and RFC password hash. Okay. So here we will compare like if DB password. So DB password hash first 16 characters are false, right? So we have to check from the afterwards means 17 characters onwards. So for that I can use I plus 16. Okay, equals to not equals to. Okay, so here logic means we are comparing the 17th bit character of DB password to first character of RFC password means our plain password encrypted, right? That password. So like this we will take 20 bytes as well. If they match, then that is a valid password user entered in the login form. So if it is not match, we will break the loop and we will return like false. If one of the byte is also not matching, means both user enter password and DB password are different. Okay. If this for loop is completely executed successfully, then we simply return true. That means valid password. Okay. So here let's call that bool valid password equal to, okay. So we can call password verification and first parameter will be our payload password, plain password, okay. And second parameter will be our database password, okay. So if it is false, okay, then return false. If it is true, then that if condition won't execute. Okay. So now up to here, all our verifications are completed. If our code execution overcome all these conditions, now it is time to generate the token for the user. That means user is valid user. Now we have to generate the token. Okay, for generating the access token, let's create one more private method. Okay, so private string generate JWT token. So to this token, just input our authenticated user information. Okay. So now first we have to generate a symmetric security key. Why we have to generate, we can understand once we move on. Okay. So where symmetric security key equal to new symmetric security key. And to this security key instance, we have to pass our secret key as a byte data. Okay. So let's go to our user service encoding dot utf8 dot get bytes of. So here we have to inject our token settings. So let's create a read-only variable for my token settings. Private read-only token settings. Okay. So let's inject. So for injecting any settings, okay, configuration settings, we have to use I options. Okay, so that comes from Microsoft dot extensions dot options, and for this option we have to specify type as our setting type, that is token settings. So token setting. So when we use I options, we have to assign it like dot value. Okay. Now I can pass my secret key to this uh, symmetric security key. Okay, underscore token settings dot secret key. Okay, here I have given static. It is not a static, it is string. Okay. Now we have to create a sign-in credentials. Okay, so these sign-in credentials will be used for generating the JWT token. So let's create an instance of signing credentials. Okay, so new sign in credentials. Okay, so it is taking the symmetric key as a value, and there is a overload method where we can provide the algorithm type also. Okay, I will give security algorithm type HMASH256. Okay. Now let's prepare the collection of claims that we want to add in our token. For now, let's add some user information as a claims. So where claims equal to new list of claims. Okay, new list of claim. So let's import the namespace system.security claims. Okay, let me add claims. So claim.add new claim, and first claim name will be sub. Okay, sub means nothing but the user ID we are going to assign. So user dot ID dot toString. Okay, let me add one more claim. First name user dot first. Same way, let's add last name user dot last name, and our final claim will be email address. Claim dot add new claim email. Okay, user dot email. Okay, now let's create the instance of JWT security token instance. So security token equal to, okay, so new security token. Here we are going to use, sorry, JWT security token, JWT security token. Okay, so here we can use one of the overloaded method. Okay, so first I want to pass issuer. So issuer, we have issuer in our token settings, right? We can pass it here. So all these input parameters I am providing to JWT security token instance are required properties for generating the token. Okay, and next I'm going to give audience. So token security dot audience. Okay, and let me give the expiration. So my token expiration I can specify like time dot now dot add minute 30 minutes as a expiration of my token. Okay. Next, sign in credentials. Okay. So here we can pass our credential object. Next, claims. So claims I can pass claims. Okay. So my JWT security token object is ready. Now let's generate the token. So let's return new JWT security token handler. Okay. Instance dot write token. To this token, we have to pass our JWT security token instance. So the final output is the string of our JSON token. Okay, so here let's get our JWT access token equal to. So what is the method? Generate JWT token and pass our user information. So we have to actual response, we have to return token data, right? So let me create a object here. Okay, means DTO, response object. So let me create a new class and I will name it like JWT token response DTO. Okay, so currently it will have one property like string access token. I will name it like access token. Okay, so first let's change the method definition. Okay, so I will have bool value also. I'm going to use tuple here. So is login success. And next one will be my JWT token response. Okay, token response. Okay. So this is my tuple type. So let's change the type of our login method in our user service as well. Okay. Now here I can change it to false, means authentication fails, comma, simply I will return null object. Okay. Here also same thing I can send. Okay. Now where result equal to new JWT token response DTO. Okay. Access token equal to our JWT access token. And finally, I can return true. That means authentication is successful and my JWT token response. Okay, now logical implementation is done. Let's create the endpoint in our user controller. Okay, so here let's create one more post method like public async task high action result login async. Okay, this method will have our login DTO payload. Okay, and it should be a HTTP post. And let's define route like login. And here where result equal to await iUser service dot login async. Okay, if result dot login success, then I can simply return my token response. Result dot token response. Okay. Okay, if it is failed, then we will use model state validation. So here we will add model error. Okay, so I will name it like login error. So invalid credentials. Okay. And written as a bad request. Okay, let's check our endpoint so that we can confirm we are successfully generating JWT token or not. Okay, so here is the new endpoint. So let me check this. First, let's check with valid credentials. Okay, I think password is correct. Let's try to check. Yes, password is correct. And if you see 200 status code and access token, I am getting as a response. If at all, if I give some invalid email and try to execute, see here, invalid credentials. So we are successfully done login endpoint. Now we have to invoke this login endpoint in our Blazor WebAssembly application. So let's close all these files. Okay. So in our go to our Blazor WebAssembly application. Okay. So login component, right? So first we have to uh, inject the HTTP client service. So inject HTTP client and I will name it like HTTP. So on successful form validation, we have to invoke the our login endpoint, right? So first we have to prepare the payload. Okay, so to prepare the payload, I can just utilize the code from my registration. So let's copy these three lines of code. No, we can copy entire code from this registration. Okay, almost this registration is helpful for me in the login as well. Okay, so let me explain the things now. So first we have to serialize our form data. So here change it to login form data and here import the namespace for JSON serializer. Okay, and we have to modify it as a string content object or payload. So import the namespace for encoding. Okay, so this is good. We are generating our payload, form payload. Okay, and here we are invoking the API call. So our API call is API slash user slash login. So let's change that as well. Okay, and our request content will be the payload and import the HTTP status code. Okay, so here I'm using HTTP status code for checking the bad request, and here we will read the dictionary as the error message, right? If you go here, see dictionary, this one key value pair dictionary, like dictionary, our model state will render the response of the error response. So here we are reading the response as dictionary. So here we are checking the bad request status code. If you observe here, okay, and reading the our response as a dictionary and looping that response and binding to a API message. So I haven't added a variable like API message. Let me add a variable, string variable, just like our registration. Okay, I added here. So for now, success, let's leave empty this success block. Okay, if okay means success. And finally in the else if, let's change message like login failed. Please try after some time. Okay. So that is my login method. What we are doing, we are preparing our form payload and invoking our login API. If the API returns bad request, we are just rendering that a bad request response to a variable like API error message. Okay, and we are checking for success also. So success logic we are going to do next. Okay, for now let's leave this block empty, and one generic message also we are displaying. Any internal server exceptions, in that case it will be helpful. Okay, so just like registration, the API errors also let's display in the same pattern. So in the registration component, copy this if block, API error message if block. Okay, and add it here inside of the form in the mudcard content. Okay, now let's check we are able to invoke our login endpoint or not. Okay, so this is our form. First, let me give invalid credentials. Okay, I'm giving invalid credentials. Let's open inspect element also. Go to network calls. Click on login. See, I'm getting invalid credentials. If you see here, our API getting status code 400 means bad request. Okay, so if I give valid credentials, okay, I'm trying to give valid credentials. Login, and if I check network call, now see 200. Network call is successful, and I am getting access token as a response. So our next steps are, what you have to do means after login, okay, how to store the token, okay, and how to decrypt the token and read the claims so that that claims information can be used inside our Blazor application. That steps, and how to invoke a secured endpoint using the access token. All these things will be checked next. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this video delivered some useful content to you all. If you like video, please do support me by subscribing to the channel, and also please don't forget to like and share the video. Soon we are going to meet with new content. Until then, signing off.